This is episode 34. In the previous episode, we had started chapter 6, which is also known as Dhyana Yoga. We had covered a total of 9 verses in this chapter, that is verses 6.1 to 6.9. Today, we will continue and cover 10 verses from 6.10 to 6.19. Honestly, I can't relate to these 18 verses of chapter 6, that is 6.10 to 6.28, and I have serious questions about whether these were originally said by God or whether these were added later. So, I will leave the judgment to you. My view is that these 18 verses, that is 6.10 to 6.28, aren't really very relevant. But let's still go through it in the spirit of covering the Gita as it is given to us today. So, I will start off with the literal translation first, and then we will talk about a few interesting points. I will cover verses 6.10 to 6.15 together. These verses are: Yogi yunjit satat atmanam rahasi sthitah ekaki yat chittatma nirashih aparigraha shuchau deshe pratisthapye sthiram asanam atmanah na ati uchchitam na ati nicham chail ajina kusha uttaram tatra ekagram manah kritva yat chit indriya kriya upavishya asane yunjat yogam atmavishuddhaya samam काय शीरो ग्रीवम धारयन अचलम स्थिर संप्रेक्ष्य नासिकाग्रम स्वम दिशा च अनवलोकयन प्रशांतात्मा विगतभिः ब्रह्मचारी व्रते स्थितः मनः संयम्य मच्चितो युक्त आसीत मत्परः युञ्जनेवं सदात्मानं योगी नियत मानसः शांतिम निर्वाण परमाम मत संस्थाम अधिगच्छति. These are verses 10 to 15. And the following is their translation. God says, those who don't have any attachment for desires or cravings, for possession, whose consciousness is controlled by the soul, and who are residing in seclusion and are constantly striving, are a real yogi. To practice yoga, the yogi should sit at a clean place, which is neither too high nor too low. Such a place should be made by placing grass, the skin of a deer or tiger, and a cloth, one over the other. Seated firmly on it, the yogi should strive to purify the mind by focusing it in meditation with one-pointed concentration, controlling all thoughts and activities. He must hold the body, neck, and head firmly in a straight line and focus at the tip of the nose with constant gaze and without allowing the eyes to wander. Thus, with a serene and fearless soul, staunch in the vow of celibacy, and with the controlled mind whose consciousness is focused on me, the vigilant yogi should meditate on me, having me alone as the supreme goal. Thus, constantly keeping the mind absorbed in me, the yogi of a disciplined mind attains nirvana and abides in me in supreme peace. So this is the translation till verse 15. Now I will cover verses 16 and 17 together. Na ati ashnata tu yoga asti न च एकांतम अनश्नतः न च अति स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो न एव च अर्जुन युक्त आहार विहारस्य युक्त चेष्टस्य कर्मसु युक्त स्वप्न अवबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः. God says, those who eat too much or too little, sleep too much or too little, cannot attain success in yoga. Yoga is not about excesses, as we said. It is balanced and controlled. In verse 17, God describes the same thing, that one who's eating, resting, effort, action, sleeping, and waking up is controlled is free from sufferings, as he attains yoga or eternal peace. So this is verse 17. And next I will cover verses 18 and 19 together. Yada vinyatam chittam atmani ev avtishthate nispreha sarva kamebhyo yukt iti uchyate tada यथा दीपो निवातस्थो नेंगते सोपमा स्मृता योगिनो यत चित्तस्य युञ्जतो yogam atmanah. God says that one whose consciousness is controlled, who is focused or established on his self, and who is free from desires is called harmonized, God united, soul united, or yogi. The simile is akin to a candle that does not flicker in the absence of fear, just as the consciousness of a yogi does not flicker as he or she is permanently established in eternal peace. This is what I keep referring to. if you look at the face of Christ, Guru Nanak, or Lord Buddha, you can observe eternal peace. And that is what is being talked about here. So this is the literal translation of all of these verses. Let's reflect on these verses. I started off by saying that honestly, I don't relate to these verses. These verses mention that the yogi is seated at a place covered with grass, the skin of a deer, or a tiger and a cloth, wherein he or she has to concentrate by focusing on the tip of the nose and with an unflickering gaze. I really cannot relate to this because it is not about a householder yogi. Secondly, I am confused because on the battlefield of Mahabharata, God asks Arjun to fight the internal righteous battle. When we used a simile, we discussed that each person goes through an internal righteous battle every day between the side of Dhritarashtra or blind senses and the side of yoga, intellect or rational discrimination. So it is about action and about doing something. How can you meditate and do nothing and still get to that? In chapter 5, when God was asked which is better, doing karma or renunciation of karma, he chose doing karma. So I don't know where these verses originate from and how I relate to these verses. That's why I said I cannot relate to these verses. But the part that I relate to is in verses 6.16 and 6.17, where God talks about excessive or less eating and sleeping. That is, whoever is not balanced. Excesses of any kind mean that your senses are controlling yourself versus your senses serving yourself. When senses become dominant over self, then ego or Bhishma wins. When the self is dominant and senses become servants of the self, then the soul is dominant or Krishna wins. And this is the internal battle which is going on. I think I relate to the part that talks about excesses reflecting the state of dominance of the senses. That is the part I can relate to. But the rest of it, I honestly cannot relate to. Anyway, we will stop here. I will leave this to your judgment. Thanks.